Hello, welcome back to my channel. They are announcing the Women's Prize for Fiction Longlist in 2 weeks from when I post this video, and I'm so excited. I've been working on my predictions list for a month or two, but like obviously accumulating names of books across the year. And yeah, this is a really exciting time of the year. Obviously been really excited for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, and I'm, all into reading that. But the prize for fiction is obviously very dear to all our hearts of those of us who follow this prize. So very excited. I've gone back and forth so much with this list. I've picked 16. I've tried to think of diversity as well as like this kind of storylines, and yeah, I've tried to get a little bit of everything. I still have 8 extras I'm going to mention at the end that I'm like, if there's the ones on my list, not all of them I want for them to be longlisted, so I think, but if they don't, then I have these 8 that I'm like, ooh, I would really like for those 8 as well to be there. We can't have it all, can we? And also there's always lots of books that we've never heard of before, so it'll be fun to hear in 2 weeks. But for now, let's dive into my predictions. I've set this list in order of publication, so obviously the eligibility is from the 1st of April last year, 2024, to the 31st of March 2025. So the first book that is on my list came out in April last year, and it is Whale Fall by Elizabeth O'Connor. This book is historical fiction. It is based in 1938 on an island off the coast of Wales, and basically there's a young woman who is living there. There's rumors of a submarine sort of in the area, and there's also the appearance of a beach whale, so there's like all these sort of mystery, but there's also like living remotely, in this sort of landscape. And then 2 anthropologists arrive on the island, so she becomes their guide, and I think that she becomes embroiled with their storyline, and she tries to see her chance to leave. So it sounds really interesting, and I feel like I've heard these themes before in books, for the Women's Prize and for the Booker, so interesting. Next, we're actually jumping to June, so I'm probably wrong here, but whatever, we're going with this list. I'm jumping to a book that came out in June 2024, and it is Passiontide by Monique Roffey. I absolutely love The Mermaid of Black Conch. When I saw this new book was coming out, I'm really excited to read it. Still haven't read it, but excited nonetheless. It sounds like it might tear my heart out. This book is based on a Caribbean island called Saint Colibri, I believe, and it is based around Carnival when a woman is found dead. It's about these 4 women who basically start a sort of revolution. It's about activism and about taking sort of I guess a change into your own hands, and about these 4 women who decide to, I think it says here, daring to imagine a different world. And I like that activism and the feminist idea as well behind it. And obviously I couldn't resist putting Monique Roffey on this list. Next is another book that came out in June 2024, and it is Portraits at the Palace of Creativity and Wrecking by Hans Smith. And I don't think I can really describe this book, because even when I read about it, I have no idea, but the vibes of it seem right. And also I think this was shortlisted for the Goldsmith Prize as well. And yeah, it just seems like a novel. It's a debut novel that seems to have like a punch and like a lot in it. Yeah, it's about, I guess, a sort of coming of age for a young woman. It says it's for readers of Milkman and a Girl is a half form thing. I'm probably wrong here, but I feel both of them have won something. But yeah, go look it up if you haven't. I feel like this is maybe a bit of a wild card, but there's always some wild cards in there. So yeah, it sounds really interesting anyway. In number 4, I decided to add Rosarita by Anita Desai to my list of prediction. This came out in July 2024. This is about Bonita, who is, I believe, visiting Mexico. She's over there and she's sitting on the bench, and this woman comes and sees her and says, "Oh my god, I know your mother." And she's like, "How?" And basically this woman says, yeah, she came to Mexico. And Bonita has like no clue that her mother has ever traveled from India to Mexico, and sort of some stories unravel from there. And it's about past and present, obviously, and the mother and the daughter coming together, but also like being at odds a little bit. And it just sounds really, really interesting. Obviously, Anita Desai has been shortlisted for the Booker before, I believe, many times. And this book sounded really I guess importance in terms of that cultural memory, but also family ties and relationships, and also especially women, like female relationships. Then I decided to add into this list This Motherless Land by Nikki May. This came out in July 2024 as well. This book reminded me a little bit of the book from last year, which I've completely forgotten the name of, which I will put here. But it's basically about two girls, they're cousins in this book. So the first one obviously is in Lagos, and her mother dies and she's sent to go and live with her grandmother in England. And it's a really difficult transition. And the other one is her cousin, who obviously already lives in England, and she is very protective of her cousin who's just arrived, and they come together with a lot, and obviously how they grow up shapes how they become as adults, and that's what we follow throughout this book. It says, This Motherless Land bridges 3 decades and 2 continents, delving into the thorny territories of race and culture and belonging, which very important to obviously explore, but also so interesting to read about. And again, it feels like themes that are explored year after year in these books with the Women's Prize. Next, you will not be surprised probably to see Elif Shafak on my list. So it's There Are Rivers in the Sky, and this one I believe came out in August 2024. And I just, again, a little bit like, well, I guess like Monique, Roffey, and even Anita Desai. Like I couldn't resist putting her on this list. I've loved everything I've read by Elif Shafak. I feel like her last book was shortlisted. Was it shortlisted or was it just longlisted? I don't remember, but it was on the Women's Prize. I feel it's never a sure bet, obviously, with these lists, because every year there's like a big book that doesn't make the list and everyone's like, oh! But I feel like she always hits the right notes, and I've added this one here. I'm really excited to read this. I actually got it in my library app during Christmas, and I just wasn't in the mood to read it, so I skipped my hold. And when I put a new hold, it was August 2025, and I was like, but clearly a lot of people have skipped it, because now I will get it in April. Don't know how that happened. I'm very happy, and I hope it gets longlisted, because I will be getting it at that point, and I will definitely read it. Oh, I didn't really talk about, I feel like the book needs no introduction, but that's not true. This book seems to get, actually, it's very much like a lot of Elif Shafak's stories. It spans 2 different storylines. It seems to be 19th century and also modern times. And as always, you know, it's about its love and its identity and loss and memory. I guess very central to a lot of themes, like by authors who sort of live between cultures, who have lived through, I guess, countries that have been torn apart and stuff like that. So I feel like this will be exactly, you know, up my alley, and I hope it will be for the prize as well. In number 7, I decided to add another author that has been previously longlisted, shortlisted, and everything. And again, it's just, I couldn't stop myself, but also it sounds really interesting, this book, and it's called The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich. I really liked the last Erdrich that I read, and I'm quite keen to read this one, and it's based around a wedding. This guy, Gary, he's about to inherit, and he needs to get married, and he thinks that marrying this one person is going to fix that. She doesn't seem to have the same feelings, and she doesn't seem to be like able to imagine a future with this man, and also the future he's imagining. And then there's another guy who's actually in love with her. Sounds interesting. It reminds me a little bit, because it's about dreams and about growing up and like where you see yourself in the world. It seems to be, obviously, and about, I guess, enduring, you know, tough times. And it's reminding me a little bit like the Restless Dolly Maunder from last year, but I'm hoping this will have a bit more personality. And I feel like Erdrich books are always, I feel like, filled with so much. Like, you can really tell where it's set. I feel the setting always has such a big impact. And yeah, it carries a lot when she writes. So I feel like it's gonna be good. But again, I haven't read this book. Let's move on to number 8. I decided to add Intermezzo by Sally Rooney on my list. This came out in September 2024. This is one that I hope doesn't make the list, because I am not a Sally Rooney fan, and I sort of don't want to have to read this book. But I have heard really good things. Like, all around, by all kinds of people, I've heard good things. And by people who've not always loved Sally Rooney before. So it just feels like there's definitely going to be Irish voices on this list, obviously. And I think this might be one. Like, it might make the list. And yeah, so I decided to add it here. We'll see. Peter is a like successful lawyer in Dublin, and he seems to be like, you know, in control, and he's like good and great and blah blah blah. And then Peter, no, not Peter, sorry, the other one, Ivan, he's a chess player, I want to say, professional chess player, and he's a bit more introverted and I guess awkward. And it's sort of in the wake of their, I think it's their father's death, so basically there's bereavement, and it's like how, like who they meet and like how they handle things and the kind of the grieving process and their relationship. And yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting. I don't know if it's for me, and obviously I will read it if it's longlisted, so we'll see. Next is another one that I hope doesn't make the list. But anyway, there's always a, well, not always, I've only followed this prize for like 4-5 years, but up to now I feel like there's always been a book from the Booker longlist shortlist that has made the women's prize list, and I decided to put Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner here, with the understanding that I actually DNF'd it, which is why I hope it's not on this list. Anyway, I personally hope it's the safe keep instead, but I don't know, it feels like I haven't added a lot of other American names on this list. Okay, I don't know, but I thought that the vibe of this, and it's a little bit of a different style than a lot of the other books, so I thought maybe this one would, I'm rethinking it, but you know what, this is written, this is what I made a choice of. But yeah, as I said, I hope it doesn't make it. I read the beginning and I was like, why am I continuing? I do not care. I do not care about this. I do not want to continue it. It's basically about Sadie, who, I don't know, you don't really want to root for her. She's sort of random. She's an undercover agent. And she's in France, I want to say, with some sort of radical eco-activist group. And she's just sleeping with this guy to try to get in with this other group. And honestly, that's why I quit, because I was like, I don't care about any of this. I feel like it was a bit of a Marmite book, from what I understood from some people's reviews. So, yes, we'll see. Another one that I'm like, oh, yeah, we'll see. In number 10, I added The Volcano Daughters by Gina Maria Balibrera. And this is also, first time, it's super interesting. 2, there's not a lot of Latino writers on this list, so I decided to, for representation, to add a book here. This seems to be set mostly in El Salvador, but it seems to span like other countries, and it is basically a story of 2 sisters. So there's this one girl who grows up in the shadow of this volcano, but one day she's sort of ripped out of that community and brought to the capital to the dictator. And I think he seems to believe that she has a gift to foresee the future. There she meets a sister she didn't know she had, and like together they sort of form a really strong bond, even though they're very, very different. And then the dictator sort of unleashes a lot of violence, and there's a massacre, and basically they survive, but there's, I guess it's about the people that are left behind, about the people who do survive, about community and sisterhood. And I just thought they were interesting themes, and also I just love always a book about sisterhood and women being there for each other, so I thought this one sounded great. In number 11, I added By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, even though she's like this famous author. This came out in October 2024. Yeah, I feel like there's always more sort of best-selling fiction in there, and I thought she's a big name. The book sounded so interesting, and I thought that's why I sort of fitted with this prize a little bit. So it says in 1581, Emilia Bassano is allowed to no voice of her own, but as the Lord Chamberlain's mistress, she has access to the theatre. And she finds a way to bring her work to the stage secretly. So this kind of gave me vibes of Maggie O'Farrell's book from a few years ago. I keep forgetting all of the names of the previous books. The Marriage Portrait, I think that's what it was. So yeah, that sounded really interesting. Then in modern day New York, we are following playwright Melina Green, and she's a playwright. She wants to see one of her plays on the stage, and she writes a story like inspired by the Elizabethan poet Emilia Bassano, who we follow in the separate one. And it sort of moves between the two eras, modern day Manhattan and Elizabethan England. And yeah, it just sounds just really interesting about parallel lives and that, like, I guess finding yourself, finding your voice within art as well. In number 12, I have The House of Broken Bricks by Fiona Williams. This just came out in January 2025. I have literally zero memory of adding this book to the list. Okay, let's see what it says. As day breaks over the Somerset levels, Tess watches the cabin-like clouds part. This morning, two sunrises graze the frosted floodplains. One rises low over a stretch of willows, while the other shines brightly from beneath the water. The light paints the house in startling crimson, a painful beauty that Tess, Richard, and their son Max, riddled with grief, find easy to ignore. But none of them can ignore Sony, who desperately wants things to go back to the way they were before. As the seasons change and the cracks in the bricks let in more light, might this broken family find a way to start to heal? Okay, cool. I don't know if I just wanted to add a book that was a bit more generic in there. Like, I literally have no idea what this is here. It's here. Okay, cool. I guess she's just one of very few English writers. No. Okay, I don't know. Let's go with it though. Again, I've written it down and made a choice at some point. Okay, anyway, in number 13, we have Fundamentally by Nussaibah Younis. This is coming out this month in February 2025. Younis is actually a doctor, like an academic doctor from, I want to say it's in like international relations or politics, something like that, because she has been very involved and also working. I think she was a fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations and stuff like that, and has worked as well, like with the Middle East and stuff like that. And so this book is sort of a little bit inspired by that. So basically we follow Nadia, who's an academic, and she's accepted a UN job where she basically goes to Iraq to rehabilitate ISIS wives, basically like ISIS women, and she becomes really like entrenched into like how to do this, but like the views of the world, and it just sounds so interesting, like so interesting, and also very not timely, because I don't think this happened recently, but I feel like there's been stories like this, you know, in the UK, and obviously with her own experience behind it. I think it's gonna be a really interesting book, and regardless if it's listed or not, I'm definitely adding this to my TBR. Next is another book that I have added because of a big name, but also, I mean, the books also sound interesting, but again, a big name that I feel like I couldn't ignore. So I added The City Changes Its Face by Eimear McBride, and I think she's the other Irish author I put in there. I mean, it might be 2, might be 3 Irish, but those are the 2 I picked. And yeah, she's won obviously the Women's Prize before, so if her book is submitted, I feel like it would be longlisted. And yeah, it says it's an intense story of a passionate love affair arriving at its first test. So in Rainy Camden Night in 1996, a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old are sort of retracing sort of like to like a 2-year affair that they've been having, and they're sort of trying to figure out like where things have gone wrong. Seems to focus very primarily like on love and like just the intimate portrait of like both of them and how they've gotten where they are basically. And yeah, it just sounds really beautiful and like human. So yeah, and then they're interesting. Oh, they're all interesting. this sounded like an interesting one. All right, we're at the last 2. Thank you for keeping going. So in number 15, I feel like I had to add Universality by Natasha Brown. I absolutely loved her first book, and this just sounds amazing again. So yeah, I feel like I had to add it here. On a Yorkshire farm, a man is brutally bludgeoned with a solid gold bar. A plucky young journalist sets out to uncover the truth behind the attack, connecting the dots between the immoral banker landlord, an iconoclast columnist, and a radical anarchist movement. She solves the mystery, but her viral long-read expose raises more questions than it answers. yeah, it just sounds great. And I'm here for it again, regardless of it's listed or not. And at number 16, I decided to add Rapture by Emily Maguire. This is coming out in March 2025 as well. And this is also, I think, my only Australian pick. Sorry, Australia. I did add this here because I feel like there's usually an Australian author in there. We follow Agnes, who is the child of I want to say an English priest. Yeah, she basically finds herself in the midst of a tragedy, and she has to sort of pick like what she wants to become, basically, and what she wants her life to be. And she disguises herself as a man, and secures a place at the revered Fulton Monastery. From there, we follow like the lives. Okay, that's my understanding of it anyway. The lives of this person who's becoming a scholar, a scribe. Then it goes into, you know, like the communes of Athens, and yeah, it sounds really interesting, the way it sort of blends history and religion as well, but also research and education, and also obviously like as a woman. Like, I don't know if this is actually inspired by like a real person, or if this is a bit more of a like, what if this had happened, and what if the men that we know that have done these big things were actually these girls that, you know, wanted to be educated, wanted to make an impact and have a life and have choices, and that's why they decided to disguise themselves. So yeah, intrigued by this one. I've not heard anything from it, but I was intrigued by it. All right, so these were my 16. Oh my goodness. I feel like there's 2 of them that I was really like, as I was saying them. To be fair, I wrote this list, I want to say at least 3 weeks ago, and I hadn't really read it since, because I was like, okay, look, I've made this list. I felt happy with it, even though new books are constantly coming out. Yeah, I feel like it's a well-balanced list. But I want to mention the other 8, and I won't talk you through them, but I will mention the other 8 that I would be happy to see on this list, even though I've only read 1, but whatever. So we have Hagstone by Sinead Gleeson. This is another Irish one, and I've started that one. I'm enjoying it, but yeah, potentially. Then I have The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. I absolutely loved that one last year. An absolute hoot, messy hoot of a book. Loved it. I think it has a chance. But yeah, we'll see. Then we have So Thrilled for You by Holly Bourne. The Cemetery of Untold Stories by Julia Alvarez. We Were Girls Once by Iowanos Odafen. Black River by Nilanjana Roy. The Lost Love Songs of Boise Singh by Ingrid Persaud. And The Echoes by Evie Wilde. I mean, oh God, I would love all those 8, you know, like take 8 out of my first list and add these in. But I'm just so excited to see what the long list is going to look like. And now that I filmed and will post this in a few days, I'm excited to go see other people's predictions. I think it's always so cool to see, you know, what people have said. And yeah, so let's all be excited for the 4th of March when the long list will be announced. I'm going to be in Spain, hopefully in the sun, and I will try to do a reaction though, because I'm so excited. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hey, see you back. Bye.